Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to another spine-chilling episode of our haunted storytelling series. If you've joined us before, you know we thrive on uncovering the darkest corners of history, the places where the veil between the living and the dead grows thin. Tonight, we're venturing into a realm you might not expect, the world of Christmas horror. While the holiday season is often associated with joy, warmth, and celebration, there exists a darker side to this time of year. A side filled with eerie occurrences, tragic events, and ghostly apparitions that defy explanation. For centuries, Christmas has been a time of both celebration and superstition. From the ancient traditions of Yule and wassailing to the Victorian-era tales of ghost stories told by candlelight, the Christmas season has always carried an undercurrent of the supernatural. But beyond the realm of folklore and fiction, there are real-life Christmas horror stories, events so chilling, so disturbing, that they have become the stuff of legend. Whether it's the tragic tale of the phantom Santa who haunted a small Appalachian town, the eerie disappearance of a child on Christmas Eve in the 1970s, or the unsettling phenomenon of cursed holiday decorations that brought terror to unsuspecting families, these stories remind us that even the most festive of times can be touched by darkness. Tonight, we're counting down 4 of the most terrifying Christmas horror stories ever recorded. Real events that have left behind chilling legacies. From haunted holiday homes to unsolved Christmas murders, from ghostly apparitions appearing in snow-covered cemeteries to the infamous Christmas tree killer, who struck fear into an entire community, each of these tales will send shivers down your spine. These are not just ghost stories told by firelight. These are true accounts of terror that occurred when the world should have been filled with joy.so. If you're ready to step into the shadows, grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for a night of terror. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, these stories will leave you questioning what really lurks beneath the surface of Christmas night, and what waits patiently in the darkness. Without further ado, let's begin our descent into the unknown. Number 4 on our list might surprise you, and trust me, things only get scarier from there. The Phantom Santa of Harper's Ferry. A holiday haunting that refuses to fade. Deep in the heart of West Virginia's Appalachian Mountains lies the quiet town of Harper's Ferry, a place steeped in history and mystery. Known for its role in the Civil War and the legendary abolitionist John Brown's raid, Harper's Ferry is also home to one of the most chilling Christmas legends ever recorded, the story of the Phantom Santa. Unlike the jolly figure of holiday tradition, this spectral Santa Claus is said to be a harbinger of doom, appearing to those who are about to meet a tragic fate. For decades, locals have whispered about the eerie encounters with this ghostly figure, and to this day, the legend refuses to be forgotten. The origins of the Phantom Santa legend date back to the early 20th century, when the town of Harper's Ferry was still a bustling community nestled along the confluence of the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers. According to local lore, the first recorded sighting of the Phantom Santa occurred in the winter of 1923, when a young boy named Elias Whitmore claimed to see a tall, gaunt figure dressed in tattered red robes standing at the edge of his family's property on Christmas Eve. The boy described the figure as having a hollow, skeletal face, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Terrified, Elias ran back inside, only to find his father dead of a sudden heart attack moments later. The townspeople dismissed the boy's story as a child's imagination running wild, but in the years that followed, similar accounts began to surface. Over the decades, reports of the Phantom Santa became eerily consistent. Witnesses described seeing a tall, emaciated man dressed in a faded red coat, his face obscured by shadows, appearing in the dead of night, always on or around Christmas Eve. Some claimed he stood silently in the snow, watching them from a distance, while others reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread when encountering him. Most chilling of all were the stories that followed each sighting. Those who had seen the Phantom Santa would soon suffer a tragic fate, whether it was an unexpected death, a violent accident, or a sudden illness. The legend grew stronger with each passing year, and soon, the townspeople came to fear Christmas Eve more than they looked forward to it. One of the most infamous encounters with the Phantom Santa occurred in the 1950s, when a local woman named Margaret Langford claimed to see the spectral figure standing at the foot of her bed in the early hours of Christmas morning. Margaret, who had been recovering from a recent illness, described the figure as completely silent, his red coat tattered and stained, his eyes filled with sorrow. She claimed that the moment she locked eyes with him, she felt an unbearable weight pressing down on her chest, as if the air itself was thick with impending doom. Hours later, her husband, who had been in perfect health, collapsed and died of an undiagnosed heart condition. Margaret would later tell friends and family that she had seen the phantom Santa once before, when her eldest son passed away in a tragic car accident on Christmas Eve a decade earlier. As the years passed, the legend of the phantom Santa only grew darker. In the 1970s, a group of teenagers decided to test the tale by spending the night in an old, abandoned house rumored to be one of the phantom Santa's favorite haunts. The group, armed with flashlights and a sense of reckless curiosity, entered the house just after midnight on Christmas Eve. At first, everything seemed normal, just the creaking of the old floorboards and the howling of the wind outside. But as the night wore on, the temperature plummeted, despite the relatively mild December weather. One of the teens, a boy named Jason, claimed to hear the faint sound of bells jingling in the distance, though no sleigh or reindeer could be seen. Then, without warning, Jason screamed. The others turned to see him standing near the staircase, his face pale, his body frozen in terror. He pointed toward the hallway, where a figure stood in the shadows, tall, dressed in a tattered red coat, his face obscured by darkness. Before anyone could react, the figure vanished, leaving behind only the sound of the wind rattling the windows. The teens fled the house in sheer panic, vowing never to return. However, Jason was not so lucky. The next day, he was found dead in his bed, his cause of death listed as acute cardiac distress, though no prior medical conditions had been recorded. His death only reinforced the legend, and from that night on, no one dared to spend Christmas Eve in the abandoned house again. Despite the many accounts of the phantom Santa, no one has ever been able to determine his true identity. Some believe he is the ghost of a long-forgotten man who met a tragic fate on Christmas Eve, his spirit forever bound to the holiday. Others suggest he is a harbinger of death, a supernatural omen that appears only to those whose time is about to come. Some even speculate that the legend may have roots in an unsolved murder or disappearance that occurred decades ago, though no records of such an event have ever surfaced. The disappearance of Emily Turner, a Christmas Eve mystery in the quiet town of Coldwater, Ohio. A chilling Christmas Eve mystery unfolded in the winter of 1976 that has never been solved. It was a crisp December evening, and the Turner family was preparing for a festive celebration, complete with a Christmas tree that reached toward the ceiling and a warm fire crackling in the hearth. Emily Turner, a bright-eyed 8-year-old with a love for the holiday season, was eagerly awaiting the arrival of Santa Claus, her excitement palpable as she darted from room to room, checking her gifts and hanging stockings with care. But as the clock struck midnight, Emily's laughter was replaced by an unsettling silence that would haunt her family and the entire town for years to come. That night, Emily had gone to bed with dreams of presents and cookies, her parents assuring her that Santa would visit if she fell asleep quickly. The house was filled with the scent of gingerbread and the soft glow of twinkling lights, creating an atmosphere of warmth and joy. But just after midnight, Emily's mother, Sarah, heard a soft tapping at the window. Thinking it was just the wind or perhaps a stray animal, she pulled back the curtain to investigate. To her shock, she saw a figure standing outside, cloaked in darkness, with a wide-brimmed hat and a long coat that blended into the night. The figure was motionless, merely staring at the house, and when Sarah blinked, he was gone. Alarmed, Sarah rushed to Emily's room, only to find her bed empty and the window slightly ajar, the curtains fluttering in the cold breeze. Panic surged through her as she called out for her daughter, but the house remained eerily silent, the joyous spirit of Christmas Eve now replaced by a suffocating dread. Her husband, Thomas, joined her in the search, combing every corner of the house and calling out into the night, but there was no sign of Emily. The family's Christmas celebration had turned into a nightmare, and the Turners were left to face the unimaginable. This is not a drill. We are now on lockdown. All students and staff must remain in their classrooms until further notice. The students exchanged confused glances, some assuming it was just another fire drill gone awry. But the teachers, pale-faced and visibly shaken, ushered them into the rooms and locked the doors, drawing the blinds and instructing everyone to stay low and quiet. At first, the lockdown seemed like any other, tense, nerve-wracking, but ultimately just a precaution. The students whispered among themselves, speculating about what had happened. Some thought a fight had broken out, others believed an intruder had been spotted on campus. But then, the knocking began. It started as a soft tapping, barely noticeable over the hushed murmurs of the students. But soon, the sound grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't the random clatter of wind against the windows or the distant thud of a locker slamming shut. No, this was deliberate, knocks that followed a rhythmic pattern, as if someone were trying to communicate. The tapping came from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. It was everywhere and nowhere all at once. One student, Megan, was the first to react. She was sitting near the back of her classroom when she felt something brush against her shoulder. She turned, expecting to see a classmate trying to get her attention, but the seats beside her were empty. The feeling of being watched settled over her like a heavy fog, and she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The other students, too, began to notice the strange occurrences. In the hallway outside, teachers and staff reported seeing figures in the windows, shadowy silhouettes that moved just out of sight before they could be identified. Some swore they saw faces pressed against the glass, their expressions twisted in agony, their mouths moving as if trying to speak. Others heard whispers in the walls, voices that sounded eerily familiar, calling out names of students who had long since graduated or passed away. The music cut off abruptly, leaving only the sound of ragged breathing in the speakers. The room was silent, save for the rapid beat of Megan's heart. She glanced at the window, and for a brief moment she saw it, a child, no older than 10, standing just beyond the glass. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, and his lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. Megan screamed, and the figure vanished. The lockdown lasted for nearly 4 hours, with police sweeping the campus for any sign of an intruder. But no one was found. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of trespassers, just an unsettling silence that refused to be shaken off. When the students were finally released from their classrooms, the school was eerily empty, as if the very air had been drained of warmth and life. In the weeks that followed, students reported strange occurrences, phantom knocks in the night, voices whispering their names in the empty corridors, and the faint strains of the lullaby playing from unseen speakers. The janitor, who had worked at Holloway for over 2 decades, refused to return after the lockdown, claiming he had seen something in the basement that night, something that should have stayed buried. Though the school remained open, the administration never addressed the events of that day. The intercom system was replaced, the windows were sealed shut, and the lullaby was never heard again. But the students knew better. They knew that whatever had been awakened that day had not left with the lockdown's end. It had simply retreated, waiting for the next time the doors were locked and the world outside faded into silence. And every year, on the anniversary of the lockdown, the knocking returns. The lockdown at St. Agnes Catholic School, when the hallways became a maze of terror. On a cold December morning in 2016, the students and staff at St. Agnes Catholic School in rural New York settled into their usual routines. The school, a historic red brick building that had stood for over a century, was a place of tradition, discipline, and faith. Its corridors were lined with religious murals, its classrooms filled with the scent of chalk dust and old wooden desks. But on that particular day, the school would become the site of one of the most unnerving school lockdowns in recent memory, one that left students and staff shaken and raised questions about whether the lockdown was the result of a real threat, or something far more inexplicable. The lockdown was initiated around 10:30 a.m., just after the morning mass had ended. The intercom crackled to life, and a voice, trembling with urgency, announced, "This is not a drill. Lock all doors and remain silent. Do not leave your classrooms under any circumstances." Within moments, the school transformed into a fortress, its doors barricaded, its blinds drawn. The students, accustomed to drills, initially assumed it was another routine exercise. But as the minutes ticked by and no further instructions were given, unease settled over the school like a thick fog. In one of the upper grade classrooms, a group of 7th graders huddled together, whispering in hushed tones. Some speculated that a student had brought a weapon to school, while others believed it was a prank gone too far. But then, the air grew colder, despite the radiators humming in the background. The students looked around, puzzled, as the temperature dropped to an almost unnatural chill. Then, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like distant voices carried through the vents. But soon, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. The students strained to make out the words, their breath forming clouds in the freezing air. One girl, Sarah, swore she heard her name being called, not in the voice of a teacher or a classmate, but in a voice that was soft, almost childlike, yet filled with sorrow. She turned to her friends, wide-eyed, and asked if they had heard it too. They had. Then the lights flickered. The classroom's fluorescent bulbs pulsed erratically, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The students watched in horror as the crucifix hanging above the whiteboard began to sway, though there was no breeze in the sealed room. Some whispered prayers, clutching their rosaries, while others simply stared in mute terror. The fear was palpable, a thick, suffocating force pressing down on them. Outside, in the hallways, the situation was growing even more bizarre. Teachers and staff, peering through the cracks in the blinds, reported seeing figures moving just beyond the doors, shadowy silhouettes that seemed to drift through the corridors like ghosts. Some claimed to hear the sound of footsteps approaching, only for the noise to stop abruptly when they reached the door. Others swore they saw reflections in the windows, faces staring back at them, their expressions twisted in anguish. Then, the most chilling event of all occurred. A janitor, tasked with checking the school's electrical room, opened the door only to find something he could never explain. The room was empty, no one inside, no sign of forced entry, but the floor was covered in footprints. Not just any footprints, tiny, barefoot impressions in the dust, leading from the doorway and disappearing into the shadows. The janitor, a man who had spent decades working at St. Agnes, had never seen anything like it. He backed out slowly, locking the door behind him, and refused to return to the room for the rest of the day. As the lockdown stretched on, the students and staff were left with no explanation for the eerie occurrences. The school's security footage, reviewed later by authorities, showed nothing unusual, no intruders, no figures lurking in the halls. The intercom system had no record of the whispered voices or the distorted lullaby that had played briefly through the speakers. The footprints in the electrical room vanished by the time investigators arrived, leaving behind only dust and unanswered questions. When the lockdown was finally lifted, the students and teachers emerged shaken, some refusing to return the next day. The administration issued a vague statement, attributing the event to a minor security breach and a technical malfunction in the intercom system. But the students knew better. They had felt something that had been watching them from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. To this day, the students of St. Agnes Catholic School speak in hushed tones about that day, their memories vivid and unshakable. Some claim that the whispers still echo through the halls on quiet mornings, their voices barely audible beneath the hum of the radiators. Others insist that the footprints reappear in the electrical room every December, just before the winter break. And those who were in the school that day say they sometimes catch a glimpse of a small child in the corner of their vision, only to turn and find no one there. The truth of what happened at St. Agnes Catholic School that day remains a mystery. Was it a glitch in the system? A mass hysteria fueled by fear? Or had something truly been watching from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to remind the school of its past? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. The echoes of that lockdown still haunt the halls of St. Agnes, a chilling reminder that some places refuse to forget. The echoes that linger as we bring our journey through these chilling school lockdown stories to a close, one truth becomes undeniable. These events are more than just unsettling occurrences. They are echoes of fear, suffering, and the unexplained. From the ghostly whispers at Redwood High to the rhythmic knocking that haunted Holloway Academy, from the spectral footprints at St. Agnes Catholic School to the distorted lullaby that sent chills down the spines of those who heard it, each of these experiences left behind a lingering sense of unease that has never truly faded. What makes these stories so terrifying isn't just the eerie encounters or the unexplained phenomena. It's the humanity at their core. These were real students, real teachers, real people who found themselves trapped in situations they could not understand, let alone escape. Whether the disturbances were the result of residual energy from the past, the manifestation of collective fear, or something far more sinister, one thing is clear: those who experienced these lockdowns were changed forever. The fear that gripped them that day did not vanish with the lifting of the emergency. It lingers in the hallways, in the memories of those who lived through it, in the whispered accounts of those who refused to speak of it aloud. Yet, even as we explore these haunted corners of academia, we must tread with respect. These are not mere ghost stories or urban legends crafted for entertainment. They are accounts of real people who endured real terror. Whether the spirits of the past truly made their presence known or if the human mind, under extreme stress, conjured something from the depths of collective fear, one thing is certain: the line between reality and the supernatural blurred in those moments, leaving behind scars that time has not erased. So, dear explorers of the unknown, as you step back into the light of the present, carry these stories with you. Let them remind you that history is not confined to books or museums. It walks among us, hidden in the walls of our schools, in the silence of empty hallways, in the quiet hum of the intercom. And who knows? Perhaps the next time you find yourself in a school, heart pounding, breath held, you'll wonder if the past is watching you just as closely as you're watching it. Until our next descent into the shadows, stay curious, stay brave, and above all, stay listening. The echoes of fear have more to say. The echoes that linger as we bring our journey through these chilling school lockdown stories to a close. One truth becomes undeniable: these events are more than just unsettling occurrences. They are echoes of fear, suffering, and the unexplained. From the ghostly whispers at Redwood High to the rhythmic knocking that haunted Holloway Academy, from the spectral footprints at St. Agnes Catholic School to the distorted lullaby that sent chills down the spines of those who heard it, each of these experiences left behind a lingering sense of unease that has never truly faded. What makes these stories so terrifying isn't just the eerie encounters or the unexplained phenomena. It's the humanity at their core. These were real students, real teachers, real people who found themselves trapped in situations they could not understand, let alone escape. Whether the disturbances were the result of residual energy from the past, the manifestation of collective fear, or something far more sinister, one thing is clear: those who experienced these lockdowns were changed forever. The fear that gripped them that day did not vanish with the lifting of the emergency. It lingers in the hallways, in the memories of those who lived through it, in the whispered accounts of those who refused to speak of it aloud. Yet, even as we explore these haunted corners of academia, we must tread with respect. These are not mere ghost stories or urban legends crafted for entertainment. They are accounts of real people who endured real terror. Whether the spirits of the past truly made their presence known or if the human mind, under extreme stress, conjured something from the depths of collective fear, one thing is certain: the line between reality and the supernatural blurred in those moments, leaving behind scars that time has not erased. So, dear explorers of the unknown, as you step back into the light of the present, carry these stories with you. Let them remind you that history is not confined to books or museums. It walks among us, hidden in the walls of our schools, in the silence of empty hallways, in the quiet hum of the intercom. And who knows? Perhaps the next time you find yourself in a school, heart pounding, breath held, you'll wonder if the past is watching you just as closely as you're watching it. Until our next descent into the shadows, stay curious, stay brave, and above all, stay listening. The echoes of fear have more to say.